Good morning, Vinnie Mirchandani here. Real pleasure to have Dobbe today from Europe, from the Mediterranean coast of Spain. I've known for a long time. He was at the European ERP vendor Unit 4, but then he started Value Inspiration Group, in which he advises a bunch of tech startups. In fact, he's developed what he calls a tribe of entrepreneurs. So he's been watching so many entrepreneurs. I thought it'd be nice to ask him about the heroics he's been seeing in his part of the world, startups and Europe focused and so on. So Tan, come on, welcome aboard. Tell us more about yourself. Tell us more about your firm and the podcast.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me, Vinnie. Finally, I'm one time on your show rather than you only be on my show. But yeah, I agree with you. I've been in the business software space all my life, working for Unit 4 in the enterprise research planning space and being in product marketing and product management. And at the end, became the chief evangelist for the company. And in 2017, I started my own business. And I saw a problem in the market whereby I see a lot of very interesting software companies out there starting off on a big idea. And they get the momentum, but at some point they hit barriers, and that stops them from really breaking through. And with that, of course, the innovation that they bring to market isn't consumed as it was supposed to be. And it has to do with a number of things. And that's what I want to solve with my company. So when I started my business in 2017, my promise was, I'll help you reimagine what can be to become remarkable. I'm a big fan of Seth Godin, the Purple Cow, and the whole vision he has around doing remarkable things, like things that people talk about, if you really put it in simple words. That's what I like about it, and it's as simple as that. You don't have to be a massive multi-billion-dollar company in order to do these things. It can be in very small things, but it's being mindful about it. So while I was having this, while I was starting my company and doing projects with businesses around the world, I realized I needed to do research, and that's where I decided I'm going to do a podcast. So in 2018, very early on, I started my podcast, and I really wanted to focus on the compelling stories that can be told about the value we can unlock when technology and people blend in the right way. I'm a big fan of doing things that make people better rather than automating them out of a job. So that's how that whole thing started. And it started as a joke, let's do 5, let's do 10. And you were one of the first to interview. And now this week I think I've posted episode 122.
Wow.
And there's many more coming. And at some point, that actually led to something else again. When one of my early podcast guests said, there's so much value in the interviews that you're doing with all these tech CEOs. You need to write a book about it. And that's what I kind of put on my list for 2019. So I used that year to really kind of spend my time and dig into what would this book look like. And I wrote it. And it ended up to be, actually, I got it here next to me. It's The Remarkable Effect. And in that book, I revealed the 10 traits of what defines a remarkable software business. So what do those companies do different from the one that people don't talk about?
John, talking about that book, let's talk about a personal aspect. I like the fact that you built it around a trip from the Mediterranean coast of Spain, where you live, to the famous surfing place in Portugal. But you had to take a plane, a train, and automobiles to get there. So how would you do that in 2020? Do you ever think about how you would have written the book if you had written it in 2020?
Well, first of all, that whole event wouldn't have taken part in the first place. So, I mean, if there's no event, there's no reason to go. But that would have been very, very difficult. I agree with you. At this moment, things are breaking up, and we're getting out of the lockdown. Although some parts are going into lockdown again, but no, I would be thinking twice. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you wrote the book in 2019. You've done so many of these 122 podcasts. I want to focus on the heroics you've heard. So I mean, we've seen amazing, for all the doom and gloom, we have seen humanity just rise up and do all kinds of acrobatics, right? Automobile companies jumping in to make medical ventilators, last mile logistics of drive-throughs and home deliveries have been amazing.
True.
Banks in the US have processed 4 million PPP. We had an emergency program called PPP, 4 million loans in a month. I mean, the numbers are staggering, either up or down, right? Airlines have been scaling down, others have been scaling up. Workday told me they ran 1 million-person payroll in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, some people are doing extremely well, some people are doing extremely poorly, but each side has required a lot of acrobatics. So tell me about what you're seeing, what your startups you've been talking to have been doing in this phase.
Well, I mean, I did a couple of things. So first of all, in my tribe, we have our Friday calls where tech CEOs kind of join up for a mastermind. But another thing that I did together with Cindy Gordon from Sales Choice is a series of panels with 10 tech CEOs from around the world about how do you survive today, but most importantly, what do you do differently to start thriving tomorrow, which is at the end after this all is kind of far behind us. And there were a couple of very interesting anecdotes that I picked from those calls. The first thing that I saw is a change in how these vendors approach their customers. Of course, they're all high on, they need to grow, they need to sell, they need to move forward. But what I've seen as examples during the pandemic was an approach that kind of turned in terms of being far more with your customers, listening to them, kind of reaching a helping hand in order for all of us to get through this in the right possible way, not taking advantage of the whole thing. So that was one thing that I really liked in terms of what it does to people. That's, although you could possibly take advantage of this because with technology, that's also, of course, when things can come out of, it can be used in ways that you take advantage of organizations, and a lot of people didn't do that. If they were, for example, were selling, I also saw examples of companies postponing payment, for example, until the 1st of next year, just to get things going, to get the value early in, and then we'll pay when you pay when things are settled and the value is actually delivered. So I really like that. Another thing that I saw was the innovation that actually came out of a number of those companies. And I gave you an example of the CEO of a company called Zenetta, which was an early guest on my podcast. On that call, I had Patrick Berglund, who's a CEO, and his business, when the pandemic started, his product was actually only a year into the market. And what he's doing, he's actually gone sort of the difficult route to market by making it really transparent what are the costs of all the routes for shipping containers around the world. So he's got companies like Nestle, Nike, Adidas, Puma. I mean, all those big names that are sending containers and containers around the world. And they were always in the disadvantage dealing with the shippers, because the shippers, they had this monopoly. You pay my price, otherwise your container is not going to get shipped. What they did with their solution is make it completely transparent, so that the price is like a market price, and then they can start thinking about long-term strategies. What happened there is that his business was really focused on those long-term things, and in one day, that whole long-term thing disappeared. So what he did, and what his team did, in 2 weeks' time, they pivoted, used elements of their components, elements of their solution, to come up with a go-to-market model which was more focused on the short-term type of thing, where they needed a complete new data set. They work with their customers to get that data. And to give you an idea about, they've been building the solution for, I think, 2 or 3 years right now. it took them about a year to get to 2.5 million validation points, and then it took them a couple of months to get to 50 million. So once they got through that network effect, where they had a base of companies that were trusting them to provide them with their information, the buyers, then it really took off. And he used actually that momentum to get new data about short-term contracts and short-term shipping, and actually got a product to market in 2 to 4 weeks. And he's actually selling that right now.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, I can go on like that.
Yeah, please provide some more examples. I was going to just say, I interviewed a VC who told me about one of his portfolio companies, and he said, they were in the healthy snack business. So they had come up with kiosks, and they put them in airports and in corporate cafeterias. Well, travel died, so that business died, right? So really, he should have shut the company down. But he said, I still have my product. I just need to find a different market. So he went to hospitals, and they were like, oh, we would love this, because we have so much, families and so on coming in to see patients, suppliers. He went to schools that hadn't shut down. They said, our cafeterias are closed. Please bring them prepackaged and so on. And the VC said he was up to 85% of his revenues within 2 weeks. Right, so it's great to hear examples of companies that have pivoted.
Yeah, it's that resilience. That resilience is really important, and it's amazing what you can do. And they all typically picked on that. It's amazing what you can do with your team when something like this happens, either within your own organization or actually working together with other organizations around you. So the collaboration is a really important point.
In contrast, a lot of the bigger vendors, technology vendors, are still trying to sell what they had 3 months ago. And so they can't wait for the upturn again. And that may be a few months, right? And or maybe 2 or 3 years in some cases. So it's much better to have a hungry, let's get it done in 24 hours, 2-week mentality. But yeah, but tell me some more. Tell me some more.
Well, I mean, you pick up on the point that a lot of vendors continue to sell what they sell and just kind of hit that same bumper. One of the discussions that was really prominent throughout the 3 calls that I have was really, I mean, I'm calling it sniper focused with segmentation. Really go into your customer base, assess who is hit most, who is coming out, and who is in more favorable positions. And really try to understand how the problem has shifted, how the goals of those companies have shifted, and with that, the challenge is to meet those goals. And with that in mind, looking at your own offering and see if what you're offering and how you're offering it is still valid for the current market. And a lot of them have pivoted with that. Give you an example for example with Sales Choice from Canada. The typical message that was resonating with the market was about we help you get crystal clear on forecasting, sales forecasting. That completely moved out of the way. What became really important was really understanding who in your customer base you should focus on in order to keep business going. So it turned completely towards the sales force and handing them the organizations that were in the market and therefore not wasting your time on people that were never going to buy anyway. That was one aspect of it. An innovation that came out of that whole discussion was that had to do with the fact that more and more people had to start working from home and not in the office, where sales directors and sales managers couldn't really coach their people on a day-to-day basis. So what they did, they started some early development that they have been working on. They accelerated that to make an AI agent, an AI coach, that was actually going to help these salespeople with guided advice while they were working at home, as if their manager was sitting next to them. That is also, I think, an interesting way of developing technology that is really helpful in a situation like this. Another CEO that we had on the call was Paul Zak from. He's the CEO of Immersion. They are creating technology to help organizations create high-performing teams. It's actually a wearable. And he's got a TED Talk, so people that listen to this podcast, check him out, Paul Zak on TED, because he did a TED Talk about what you can sense in people in terms of what their intent is and how they feel from a how do you say that? It's something that comes free from your brain, which you can sense with technology. So what he did, they actually already had some technology out there that they hadn't shipped, and it appeared at that point in time not really valuable. But it appeared really valuable when the pandemic hit the market, and it was technology where you can actually sense how your employees were feeling working from home. There's a psychological safety with everything happening around them. Like, for example, working from home with their family, and for example, their wife got fired, and other things happened with family that got ill. So it does a lot with you, and it does a lot with you also from a performance perspective, and feeling in the right way in your job. So with the technology, managers could touch upon. Well, they actually started to do sort of stand-up meetings twice a day instead of once per day, and using the technology to really sense second by second, how are you feeling? And by sensing that, and sometimes people don't express it, they could sense, okay, something is wrong, pay attention to that, have that extra word with them, and see how you can help them go through that and be supportive with them. So really technology, first of all, not coming to market, then becoming really relevant, and then being able to ship that fast made a difference.
So Tom, recessions can be really brutal on startups, but on the other hand, we have seen just a whole bunch of new opportunities come out of this crisis, right? So we are seeing the pandemic modeling is going to open up new health data opportunities. Obviously, telemedicine has taken off, but there are new forms of dealing with the healthcare system, new opportunities. E-commerce has taken off, along with that, last mile delivery. So people are looking at robotic deliveries, autonomous deliveries, drive-through mobile technologies. We're seeing for universities and schools, distance learning, different forms of distance learning. Video conferencing has taken off. So, in the life sciences space, vaccines and therapeutics, just the opportunities that have opened up are just amazing. What are you hearing from your tribe and other entrepreneurs? Are they excited, or are they still trying to sell what they have developed in the last year or two?
No. I mean, they're excited, and that was a very. With the discussions I had at that topic were really vibrant. One of the things that came out was the importance of curiosity in companies. That's a chapter in itself in my book. It's trait number 4. The art of mastering curiosity, and not only with a few people in the company, but actually with the whole company. Everybody can contribute to this, because everybody is at the end, thinking about how can you level the company forward and speak to customers about it. One example that I really liked from the calls that I have was with the COO of a company called Aerobotics, Timothy Willis, and he was talking about, first of all, micro-focus. The whole topic of focus, and we talked about it earlier, the segmentation part, but being super focused about who you're for and who you're not for, that helps with that capability to capture new opportunities. They're selling to farmers, typically to citrus farmers, those citrus, and these can be really big farms. And what they do, they actually have drone technology. And that's how I started a couple of years ago. And with the drone technology, they don't only take pictures of the farm, but actually they use artificial intelligence to really say tree by tree whether there are issues. And then with that, they can start to predict yields. They can give advice in terms of where to focus with water, with pesticides, and so on. So the farmer can really kind of manage all things from the office. Sure. First of all, what I saw in this period was normally those farmers, to build a relationship with them, you have to go to the farm. That was sort of the golden rule. What they saw during the pandemic is that they're very capable of doing this online through calls like this. And I've heard that from a number of those vendors, that whole sales experience and even the planning experience in terms of rolling out can all be done online, which makes it far more profitable and far more scalable at the end. But the other thing was there that they saw a lot more uptake from that market and willingness to start working with the new technologies out there and get, well, that was in relation to, for example, the 1.5 meter economy, as they call it, the distancing. Yeah, I mean, to go through your farm, large farms, and just go with a tribe of people figuring out where your issues are, that's not sustainable. And it's also in this economy not something you want to do. So you want to use a technology to do that for you, and then use your people in a different way. What came from that is a further uptake in the uses of those types of technologies, whereby the accuracy of the data grew, the volume of the data grew, which that actually accelerated something else in the insurance business, whereby they can actually work with insurance companies to predict yield and to predict the production that's coming through the pipeline, through the whole value chain. So these are all things that are really about leveling up. Another example that came out of the call that I had with Dagmar Schuler. She's the CEO of a company called Ordering, and they're in the emotional intelligence business. So they have technology that listens, and with the listening, they detect. And although, of course, they use it in different formats, they started to think about how can we use their technology to really be a help in this pandemic. And they started to work with the research agencies, with the hospitals, and with the governmental organizations out there, and created in less than a couple of weeks technology whereby listening to a voice could detect whether you have corona or not.
Seriously.
And that is like scalable then. So they're in the early stage, but yeah, I mean, this whole thing of curiosity, thinking beyond that what you normally do, looking to solve meaningful problems, and I think this is one, and then bringing software to market to start delivering impact. And of course, first one version will be so-so, second one will be better. But they started to work with the material they have, and I think they came up to, if I recall best from the call, 85% accuracy of detecting.
Wow.
And that is fantastic.
Because once if you could call every morning, and it says you sound like you may be positive, then you can get a test.
Exactly.
Rather than just randomly going and getting tested. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that everybody would applaud for that. And doing it in a way that it doesn't reveal your privacy, which is not a big thing. So curiosity is a big thing. To be ready for every pandemic at the end, and for every crisis out there in the market, and then the resilience to take it forward and to experiment and not fearing that you fail, because at the end, then you fail, you learn something, you stand up, you do it again.
Feel faster, right?
Exactly.
So tell me, where are you seeing the opportunities? Because you're talking to South African, European, US, Canadian companies, some Asian ones. What is the optimism around the world, and how is the world seeing the US right now? Because the political news around the US cannot be very positive, but opportunity-wise, all the interviews I've been doing, it's just amazing what innovation is going on in the US. Tell me what you're hearing.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you, and you can see from the variety of examples that I shared here: shipping industry, sales, agriculture, medicine, audio. I mean, all of those things. It's just looking at what's available and how can you apply that to the biggest problems that you have out there in the world. And whether that is in the Netherlands or in Spain or in the US doesn't really matter at the end, because all of these vendors deliver those things around the globe. So the South African vendor is not dedicated to only South Africa. They do business in North America as well and in Europe. Same for the one that is ordering from Germany. They're also shipping around the world. So location has nothing to do with this whole thing. Whether that innovation is coming from Singapore, we can all use it in Canada. But it's having an eye for that and having the guts to bring it to market and make that bet. And I think that is, of course, that's in the DNA of startups. That's in the DNA of scale-ups. So I think that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. And the fact that, of course, North America is currently going through a sort of a second wave again. Yeah, we might have the same thing going on in 2 or 3 months in Europe. You see, of course, this whole thing is going around the world, and who knows where it's going to end and where it's going to come back. Fact is, we have to deal with this and use technology to better prepare ourselves for this, to detect it faster, to solve it faster, and to adjust to the new normal.
Yeah, which brings me to my question I've been asking everybody. So do you see a V recovery, a sharp recovery? Do you see a U, a gradual recovery? Do you see a W up and down, given the flare-ups maybe coming back or spreading at different times around the world? Or do you see an L, it's going to be dead for a while? In your conversation with your entrepreneurs, what is the mood?
At the moment, the mood that I get from, I'm doing regular polls on my tribe, and I ask, okay, so what do you see right now? How is your lead intake? How is your pipeline developing? There's positive news. I speak to a lot of organizations that are at the level where they were, or even beyond that. That has to do maybe with the fact that this is technology, and technology is in demand right now because of the fact that we are having to do so many things differently. Of course, when you are in different industries, it could be completely different. What I see at the end is a lot of countries are coming out of the lockdown, where everybody starts to get momentum again. And what we hope, of course, is that everything keeps under control, so that we don't have to go into a second lockdown again.
Yeah.
Certain areas in Spain right now, as we speak, are experiencing that. Not the whole country, pockets of the country. And I think it's really protective, because it's not about thousands of people. It's like a spike of like 20 or 30% on a couple of hundred people.
Yeah. But
they're like, okay, try to keep it under control, because we've learned from it.
The fascinating thing in all the interviews I've been doing is I've learned about industries that I wouldn't even have thought about. So in the US, the housing, commercial, residential market is on fire because the interest rates are low. People are refinancing their mortgages. And so that has been absolutely on fire. RV, recreational vehicles, are on fire because people don't want to fly or stay in hotels. They would rather drive to the place, right? You can't get a campsite. It's all sold out, right? You look at, on the other hand, you look at commercial real estate, you don't know what's going to happen there. So that's a lot of pressure there. Airlines, a lot of pressure. So, but it's interesting how different industries that you would not even have thought about are doing amazingly well, right? So it's as a good.
It reminds me of another discussion I had, but I completely agree with you, and it's sort of counterintuitive as well. One of the things that, for example, Patrick Berglund, the CEO of Cineta, said, within weeks, we suddenly had 20% less cost. And he said, we've been really focused on keeping this all lean. We're a startup. There's not all the money in the world, so we have to be really keen on how we spend our money. And still, within weeks, we had 20% fat cut away. He said, it drives me nuts how that's still possible, but it is possible. And that goes to your point about the commercial real estate. A lot of companies possibly will say, I'll have maybe a couple of rooms that I hire here and there, so that my people, if they need an office, they can go to an office. But those big, lumpy offices where we all had to go to, that's history. So who knows? Possibly these will be converted again to normal houses to kind of deal with all the demand there.
As an executive told me, he says, anytime you have a big shock, you go back to 80% of where it was before. He says, this time you may only go back to 50%. So we will have a swing back, but probably not back 80%. So
yeah,
I don't think we'll get away from real estate or person-to-person meetings and so on, but far fewer and much more efficient. That's what I've been very impressed with is in the last 2 weeks, I've interviewed somebody who has been trying to move from analog to digital for 15 years. Amazing the productivity the guy has. 5-minute videos, he can keep his meetings so tight, right? Amazing. Most of us will have to become like that. And the other person I interviewed was his president wanted to do something inspirational for the company. And so he said, I'm a music fan. I know 30 people around the world. Let's come up with a Zoom session for music. Well, he says, this guy said he didn't realize how complicated that would be. I did it for him. The creative technologies he applied to come up with it, in the end, it was only a 3-minute video. But you look at it and you go, this came together easily. My God, the stuff he had to do to make it all come together, phenomenal. Yeah. So we're learning so much in this period, and our productivity will improve, our creativity will improve. So I'm glad you're an optimist. I'm an optimist too. There are way too many people who are just looking at a negative from this phase. Stay positive. Any final words?
Well, I agree with you. It's been inspiring at the end. Of course, don't take that wrong. But yeah, I think this one has been, well, it's certainly the biggest crisis I've experienced in my life. Hopefully the last one from a perspective of impact on people. But yeah, compared to other crises that I've seen, I think this one will bring a lot of good things. And things that we have come to appreciate in just a period that was just long enough to actually made us happen. Because if it was only 3 weeks, we would just crashed on. But now it's months.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people will say, hey, if we will go back, but this is what I want to keep here. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, Tan, hopefully you can get back to your surfing in Portugal soon. But thank you for your time. I appreciate you sharing all the experiences.
It was a pleasure.
Stay safe.
Same to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yep. Bye-bye.